have to watch as soon as it comes up. It says it's up. Okay, yeah, so we're live on YouTube. Good morning, everybody. We're here with Sharon and a wide cast of characters, Lynn and Marcy and a few other folks, and Sally and Dove.
Yes,
Sally,
Sam, come on board.
Sally's going to be on again later this afternoon
Oh,
too.
good.
Yeah,
Okay.
she's taking that the time after Wayne and Ozzy, so it's going to be really nice. I'm very happy about that. So yeah, so here we are. Never forget to laugh. Let me get our book up in the. Well, you know what? There's a share screen option. I should have looked at that because I don't like the way this share screen is working now. It's weird. Um, hmm. What if I do that? What would that be like? Oh, I see. No, I don't want my picture up there. I'm sorry, I'm talking to myself. Trying to figure out what setting to put this thing on, but I think I got it. All right, so we should have it up on the screen. And we're reading Never Forget to Laugh by Bill Thetford, by Carol Howe. It's the story of Bill Thetford and his life in the scribing of Course in Miracles. And right now we're post the course, and we're reading some things that people have written or said about Bill. I'm going to go back. Uh, yeah, let's read this. Um, Story about who is it? Gosh, the reminiscence of Bill Thetford. Let's just read this. I know we read part of this last week, but I'll read and then we can talk about it.
Well, we can all read. I don't want you to have to read the whole time because it's hard for
Well,
you to.
no, but I'm going to read some, and then you can read, that Marcy can read, and
Okay.
Sally can read, and anybody else who wants to read can read.
This is a really great book. I have it in my hand right now because I feel like when you read this book, you're doing the course too because it's all the same.
Well, it doesn't matter what you're reading, you're doing the course. So,
Right.
I
Right. It
mean,
doesn't matter
that's
what you're
what's
doing.
so
Yeah.
good about it, all of it, that we're doing it.
Right. Yeah, you're right there. Yeah.
So, a reminiscence of Bill Thetford. In March 1980, Carol invited me to attend a presentation about the course given by Jerry Jampolsky, a widely known author and teacher of its principles, and Bill Thetford, the man who had transcribed ACIM in the late 60s and early 70s. She had often spoken of these two, and I very much wanted to hear them, regardless of my lukewarm interest in the books. So it was on the morning of April 12th I drove to Denver for the day-long event. It was held in a rather small old church in a quiet neighborhood. And I'm just thinking, just off loud, I think that might be the church where I saw Ken the first time when we went to Denver and saw Ken. He says, I was a bit early, and as I entered the foyer, Carol came over to greet me, saying she wanted to introduce me to Jerry and Bill before things got started. Jerry is a delightful, radiant person whom I have since heard several times, always with pleasure and gratitude for his great understanding of the course. He was already engaged with other participants, so after introducing us, Carol steered me toward a tall, slender man standing alone to one side. In contrast to Jerry's ebullience, this person was rather restrained and unassuming, with a gentle easiness of manner about him. Carol introduced us, then darted off, and we started to shake hands and exchange the usual "I've heard so much about you" pleasantries. Then a most extraordinary process suddenly began dominating what was happening. As we shook hands, Bill began speaking, but while I looked into his kind, friendly eyes, his words receded, and a powerful jolt of recognition rushed through me, simultaneously with the thought, but I know you. We've already met before. Immediately following, I felt intense anxiety and a devastating sense of loss, accompanied by the thought of, but where? What happened? And a desperate longing. I can't bear to lose you again. Then my entire being flooded with light and peace and the realization, of course I know you. You are myself, and I'll never lose you again. Wow. The experience receded as quickly as it had come. It had all taken place within a couple of minutes at most. We had both been talking, and while we were still shaking hands, as Bill finished whatever he was saying, completely innocent, I am sure, of the upheaval he had precipitated. I thanked him rather incoherently, turned around, walked over to the sales table, and bought the ACIM set on the spot. I literally don't remember anything else from that day, except that they spoke and I was at peace inside. Imagine that. Just have you ever had a meeting with somebody where just being with them um, shifted you and brought you to another place entirely? It was
Hmm.
just, what a what an experience for someone to have, and didn't remember anything else for the rest of the day because they were so caught up in this connection. Sharon, yeah, please go ahead.
You know, Karen sent me a Mariam Williamson talking about how the founders are all um, gone, like the founders of the course. And
Hmm.
she was playing tribute. It's beautiful and something to actually look at um, because it's really saying that now she's saying they're all gone. And I would say John's still here. Wasn't he in the beginning too?
John Monday,
Yeah.
he wasn't part of the scribing or anything.
Okay. Right. Okay.
Yeah,
He came.
he was kind of he was just a friend of Helen, basically.
Right. Okay. All right. That's what I didn't know because but John is so they're all gone then except for Carol. Carol's still here. She's one of them, right? Or no?
No, not really. I mean, she's one of the first students for sure, and
Right.
Jerry Jampolsky, and it, there was a lot of really amazing teachers that came out of that group.
They really are. That's what the thing I see that when I listen to the old, this is what Miriam was saying basically, that we have so much gratitude because these people really brought a teaching that was so difficult into this world. Like it's a difficult teaching for the times because we today we with the internet we know awakenings all over the place. But when I picked up the course, I didn't realize how much I didn't know about what this meant. Peace and anyway, I don't know if I made any sense, but okay.
I don't know you're doing something weird with your mic. It sounds like you're.
Because I'm walking, and that's a problem.
Oh, okay, okay, yeah.
Now
That
I'm
was
done.
like
I'm done walking.
I thought you were
Marcy says, "Be back in a few minutes." Okay.
I thought you
Yeah.
were scratching your head with your microphone.
Yeah, it's just weird. I'm sorry. Okay. Yeah. Anyway, where'd you stop?
Okay. Let's see. I started the course that day.
Okay. Do you want me to read or you?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. I started the course that day, and it has changed my life, joining the knowledge and experience I had gained from Eastern traditions. Okay. With a new understanding of Jesus's eternal teachings, which has been in my life since childhood. In the process, I have come to understand also what happened that day. Bill apparently was a very modest teacher of God. The course's term for one who has chosen to see another as himself. He was reluctant to be out front, preferring a behind the scene advisory role in promoting ACM principles and seeing his role as scribe as his most important contribution. Okay, I didn't realize what time it was. Let me get. Let me just turn this off. Okay, considering the course's transforming effect on countless thousands worldwide, this is an accurate assessment. I'm told, however, that Bill didn't see himself as important or even especially good. I believe that even though he was a learned, sophisticated man, his greatest strength by the end of his life lay in his innocence. And that's the truth for all of us, really. The Vedic tradition of India is where I first understood the truth. The Veda, or knowledge, is universal, eternal, and always present and available. It manifests in a particular time and place because of the willingness of a few to minister to the spiritual needs of the many. For a while, the specific form of truth spreads and flourishes, but often it becomes too far removed from the original inspiration and is diluted or lost. A true teaching, however, will inevitably revive and again transform people's lives, as A Course in Miracles is demonstrating for thousands who have become dissatisfied with traditional Christian structures. Whenever the renewal process begins, it is because even one or two individuals are willing to allow changes in their perception of each other and the world. They are not perfect, but they consistently seek to suspend judgment, see another's interests as not separate from their own, and forgive. Those who make this effort witness to the truth and they accomplish their goal. And all do eventually, they are able to bring others to their own healing within, sometimes knowingly, often inadvertently. Okay, who wants to read now? Okay. Bill Thetford was such a witness. After the course was transcribed and published, he continued for the remainder of his life to try to live its principles on a daily, never ending basis. This is surely the most difficult and fearful task, it seems, but is ultimately all we are asked to do in this world. For the process of forgiveness is what removes the blocks to the awareness of love's presence. And forgiveness really is the God self, or the I am presence undoing, or you could even say the Holy Spirit. They're all the same, and they're undoing it. But we don't do that. This is happening in the universal mind. One mind is waking up. And one of the things I read that Ken was saying is awakening is not special. And I really thought it was. I mean, I thought, yeah, well, that's special because look how far they got. And that's the ego. The ego's in this all the time because the comparison was definitely what egos do, right? So I doubt that Bill was ever fully aware of the power that his willingness and commitment gave him. But I was only one of the many recipients of the fruits of his labor. For one moment, he suspended all prejudice, judgment, and expectations of me, providing a mirror unclouded by egoic perceptions and needs. In that clear mirror, he showed me who I really am and opened the door to the way home. As we return to an innocent perception of the truth, of each other, the Christ comes forward and reveals the self that is always present. An old gospel hymn sings, Jesus, lover of my soul, let me see my soul at last. Thanks, Bill, I got it. Bill was a walking miracle, innocently loving, exerting an enormously powerful healing influence while not realizing what he was providing. His gift was innocence, not specialness. And that came from being willing to change his mind. When you really listen to Bill, you can feel that gentleness come through. What more need what more need be said about the utterable power of perceiving one another and ourselves as innocent at our very core, despite what our senses observe? So this morning I was listening to Maureen, the 365 lessons, and she was saying that she sees everyone as innocent now. And that was really important for me to hear. Because if I'm still talking about someone on my screen, I'm believing they're real, and I'm believing what I'm thinking about them about my mind. So it's very important to own everything, but you can't do it until you realize that's what you're doing, because otherwise the ego refuses it. At least that was my experience. What more need be said about the unutterable power of perceiving one another and ourselves as innocent at our very core, despite what our senses observe? The choice is universally available to everyone. Thus, despite his ambivalence about teaching, for many, Bill was the greatest teacher they had ever known. Okay, your turn now, Lynn. Lynn?
I can read some, Sally.
Thanks,
Oh,
Sally.
okay.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
I don't know if there's a delay or something, but when you say it's your turn and then somebody doesn't pick up the mic within like a nanosecond, you think they're not going to pick up the mic. And I think that there might be a delay between. So
Yeah.
give people kind of a chance to, assimilate, oh, I need to pick up the mic and pick up the mic. Because yeah, I think maybe someone else would, you know, jump in there.
I
But
think it's a great point, because really that's what I have to work on too. Patience, like just pausing.
yeah, well, it might be just a delay in your computer,
Yeah. I
between
don't
when you
know. I
stop
don't know.
talking and we hear, because I notice there's a delay from when the end of the page and the next page starts. Um, there's a few seconds in between there. So I think it might be just a computer delay. So I think it's just good for us to you know, give just a moment, just stop and give a moment and then see if someone shows up. That's how it happens to me. If I say, does somebody want to read and somebody doesn't pick up their hand for a while, I'll just sit here and wait.
Right. Right. That's good. Okay. Well,
Somebody
Sally, get
will.
to it. Yeah.
Okay.
Here,
Go ahead.
throughout the course, we are told in every possible way that attacks must stop and that defenses are not only unnecessary but counterproductive. They do not make us safe but only add to our sense of danger, producing exactly what we are trying to avoid. Like everyone, Bill had developed his own defense strategy, primarily withdrawal from others, holding in and holding back, which results in depression, apathy, and a stubborn insistence on being right. Well, that's a tough one, being right. um, ACIM is very clear that physical birth is not our beginning and physical death is not the end. In this life, a chapter in the ongoing continuity, defenses develop early and take place within the context of family, however that is constructed. Boy, that's for sure. We blame everything on mom and dad in our past. um, Bill seems to have had a loving relationship with his mother. She read to him and took care of him while he was ill. Apparently, he had no particular issues with her. His father, on the other hand, was his challenge. Bill rarely mentioned him, perhaps even feared him. He was a working man and often absent. It seemed Bill experienced him as not being present for him physically or emotionally. Bill confided that he felt the wrong child died, a haunting, guilt ridden statement about his beloved sister's sudden passing when he was 7. Deeply traumatized by her death, he said that in his sister's funeral, his father, who adored the little girl, seemed to convey that Bill should not have been the one should have been the one to die. Why, that's not very nice. No one knows if that was the father's intention, but he did shut off from his son. And 6 months later, Bill became seriously ill. He also remembered his father berating him later on for being a financial burden because of that illness, and ultimately becoming ill himself through worry and grief. Joe, his college girlfriend, knew both Bill's parents and commented, his father was sort of a strict, rigid gentleman. I don't think Bill ever really related to him well. His mother, who worked two jobs to help supplement their income, I would say, was probably over protective and pampered him. His mother would fix us these beautiful picnic lunches and take us to take with us when we were going bicycling. No wonder Bill was always in the prepare to escape mode, being relentlessly preoccupied with his own imagined guilt. If you did not feel guilty, you could not attack, for condemnation is the root of attack. Um, for it is guilt that has obscured the Father to you, and it is guilt that has driven you insane. He carried forward the burden of guilt and projected it onto others, causing him much unnecessary pain along the way. Catherine Prescott remembers, we used to talk about yielding, about how there was a tendency of his ego to yield to whatever power was in his space. But what was underneath that was his guilt about being alive when his sister had died so young. And he was sick, wasn't he? For years. He was very ill as a child.
Yes, he was sick. Yes.
Yeah. So I'm sure that he
He had
also
rheumatic fever, I think it was.
he was made to feel guilty for that illness as well, I'm sure. Um, by his dad. But did anyone else want to pick up on reading?
Sure, I will. Yeah, thank you, Sally. Yeah, I appreciate this so much, because this is a discussion that any one of us could be the subject of. I was ill when I was a child. Or someone may have had a sibling that passed away, and always felt guilty that they were the one that survived, or there's so many things. It's really kind of the same old story. It's the same story over and over, just in a different, different characters, different names, maybe a little bit different of situation. But we all have these things that happen to us in our childhood. Excuse me. Which is, I mean, you look at this and think, oh, well, children shouldn't have to suffer through all these things because they're so innocent. Well, that's exactly how the ego works, is by attacking the innocent, um, and making it appear that you're weak, you're a failure, whatever it is that you grow up thinking about yourself. This is all part of the play, to convince us that we are something that we're not, so that eventually we can then turn around and recognize that that's not true. Um, and so it doesn't matter, you may have the most idyllic childhood, and one small trauma could completely shift you and change you and make you, suspicious of the world, and make you think that, some, that you need to defend yourself, and and maybe even become attacking. Um, all of these happen to us for the same reason. It's all to make us look at what we think we are and make a decision one way or the other as to what it is that we're going to be. Um, and if I think, I was sick when I was a child, I was molested when I was a child, I was beaten when I was a child. I had all kind of stuff happen to me when I was a child, all right? Teachers were mean, whatever. all these different things. And yet, I, came up with this undying and very deep devotion to God and to Jesus. And I really, all I really wanted was to be connected to God, to remember God. That's all I ever thought about, no matter what the hell was going on when I was a kid. My main concern was I want God. That's you may not have felt that way. You may not, it may sound strange to think that someone would feel that way, but I think if you really looked at it, you would find that same thing within yourself. It may be called something else or hidden in some way, but it's that longing for our Father that is just the natural thing when we think that we've been lost. So excuse me. I honestly believe that all of those things happened purposely, not because somebody else wanted them to happen, but because I wanted them to happen so that I could see, why it was that I didn't want to be here in this world and be a part of the dream anymore. That I really, once I recognized that these are all um, components of the dream that are like cogs in a machine. And if you can take one out and replace it with another. That's why I think that movie Dark City affects me so much, because that's exactly what they're doing. They're taking, one thing out, one person out of the character and replacing it with a different person, so that the character, goes to sleep one day being, the banker, and wakes up the next morning being a housewife. That this is what's happening with us in this dream, and it's all basically you can switch it around any way that you want to, and it's still going to make a story that you're going to believe, because this is uh, uh, how how I want to say innocent. It is really how innocent we are, that we're just so dumb innocent that we're just like, okay, this is what I am. This is what we we're just clueless about all of this, even though in reality we're the mastermind of it. We've taken this pill of oblivion, and we've come into this place and just pretended like we don't know. How did I get here? What happened? Oh my gosh. And now I have to live through all this trauma. And oh my gosh. Honestly, it's all purposeful. And it's all purposeful. And the reason being, I really I want to know why I should love God. I want to know why I should want the truth. For some reason, I think, there's some alternative. And so I'm going to look for it until I'm proven wrong. So, uh, and that's what all this is just a way to prove that the ego is mistaken completely, and what we are is absolutely innocent. And so I'll continue reading. Uh, so we're talking about Bill, his thought process, or how he experienced himself. So what was underneath was that his guilt about being alive when his sister had died so young. And so he just became smaller rather than bigger. It was like he thought if he could just make himself small, then it was okay for him to be alive. He admitted to being deeply traumatized by her death. Let me go and see where that particular thing came from. La, da, 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 da. Catherine Prescott interview by Tam Cohen in the Origins of A Course in Miracles. So interesting. So that Tam Morgan, she is something else. Okay, so So Carol says, no wonder Bill was always in the prepare to escape mode, being relentlessly preoccupied with his own imagined guilt. And this is from the course. If you did not feel guilty, you could not attack, for condemnation is the root of attack. For it is guilt that has obscured the Father to you, and it is guilt that has driven you insane. And that is from the Course of Miracles. Let me go on. Oh, and this is going to just tell me a page number. That isn't going to help. Page 236, because I don't have my book right next to me here. So, but I'm used to the chapter and verse thing. So, okay. So, he carried forward the burden of guilt and projected it onto others, causing much unnecessary pain along the way. Catherine Prescott, here we are with her name, remembers we used to talk about yielding, about how there was the tendency of his ego to yield to whatever power was in his space. But what was underneath that was his guilt about being alive when his sister had died so young. And so didn't I just read that? Oh, wait, I must have gone back by accident. Oh, I did when I looked at it took me to the wrong footnote. Okay. Sorry, guys. I must have needed to read that. The following extensive commentary from the text about his relationship with his parents in particular and parenting in general is instructive for everyone. Okay, this is from the text, which is the basically just transcribed notes with no editing of the course that included all of Helen's notes as far as they knew. So, and it's fine that she's quoting that because nobody really cares anymore about all this stuff. We used to be upset about the text being out there and everybody doing it, but I don't care at all anymore. Just I'm happy that people are reading it. So, as you have so often said, no one has adopted all of his parents' attitudes as his own. In every case, there has been a long process of choice in which the individual has escaped from those he himself vetoed while retaining those he voted for. Bill has not retained his parents' political beliefs, in spite of the particular kind of newspapers that constituted their own reading matter in this area. The reason why he could do this was because he believed he was free in this area. There must be some acute problem of his own that would make him so eager to accept their misperception of his own worth. This tendency can always be regarded as punitive. It cannot be justified by the inequality of the strengths of parents and children. This is never more than temporary and is largely a matter of maturational and thus physical differences. It does not last unless it is held onto. When Bill's father came into his new office and destroyed it, it was quite, and that's in quotes, destroyed. It is quite apparent that Bill must have been willing to let it be destroyed. The many times that he has commented on this event alone would suggest the extreme importance of this misperception in his own distorted thinking. Why should anyone accord an obvious misperception so much power? There cannot be any real justification for it because even Bill himself recognized the real problem by saying, "How could he do this to me?" The answer is he didn't. This is Jesus talking. This is some of the personal stuff that was taken out of the course. It's from the text. So this is Jesus talking to Helen and telling her this stuff. Okay, so Bill has a very serious question to ask himself in this connection. We said before that the purpose of the resurrection was to demonstrate that no amount of misperception has any influence at all on a son of God. This demonstration exonerates those who misperceive by establishing beyond doubt that they have not hurt anyone. Bill's question, which he must ask himself very honestly, is whether he is willing to demonstrate that his parents have not hurt him. Unless he is willing to do this, he has not forgiven them. Man, this is, I love this. I wouldn't be surprised if this is not in that parents and children book too, because this is, I mean, really very clear. Um, unless you can look back on the quote unquote traumas of your life where you believe that you were hurt and recognize that um, that nothing, it didn't hurt you at all in any way. You know, you may have perceived it as being painful at the time. You may continue your entire life saying, I've been hurt, I've been hurt, I've been hurt. But the fact is, if you look back at it, which is how I went through a lot of healing over events in my childhood, and what I did actually was I asked Jesus to help me to see the love that was there. I just asked Jesus to help me to see the love that was there. And instead of what I thought was happening. Because I recognize that if it's only love or a call for love, then all of those things were either love or a call for love. And it was the same thing. Love and a call for love are the same thing. So what Bill's parents did, was love and a call for love. And what Bill did was love and a call for love. And that's all any of it ever was. So, when I was able to see that I mean, it took some really deep delving, and, still sometimes little things pop up. But, for the most part, I was able to look at everything that had happened to me that I could remember from my lifetime, from my childhood, and see that it was all love. All of it was love. And, some of it as a result of my call for love, some of it as a result from but it still was love, all of it. And when I was able to see that, I was able to completely forgive, my stepdad, my mom, my teachers, my, grandma, my, everyone whoever, quote unquote, offended me. I was able to see it all. And excuse me, it absolutely shifted the way that I see everything now. So, I believe Jesus saying this, unless you're willing to demonstrate that your parents didn't hurt you, that they nothing happened, then you haven't forgiven them. But when you forgive them, you can let go of all of that. And I do not suffer in any way at all now because of any of those things, not even a little bit. And, I can look at other, people, children who are going through all these kind of things as well and recognize that, it's the same thing. And that's a hard thing to do because you're projecting others out there and projecting all the hurts that they could possibly go through just to see that it's all love. I think, eventually that's going to be all we'll see. And then we'll just be able to laugh about what we thought happened. So let's see. So parents do not create the image of their children, though they may perceive images that they do create. However, as we have already said, you are not an image. If you side with image makers, you are merely being idolatrous. And that sounds really harsh, right? It doesn't sound like Jesus has been, well, you're just being idolatrous if you're siding with image makers. But it's not, he's just saying a fact. If you're believing in the images of our parents or our children or any image that we perceive, if we look at it and determine that face value that is what this other person is this image, this picture we made up in our mind, we're being idolatrous. because it's not the truth. It's an image that's been put in front of what is really there. I love this. Um, does anybody else want to read? This is still the ur text that is
Yeah,
uh,
I'll read. What? Where? Where should I read?
okay. Bill has no justification.
Okay. All right. Bill has no justification whatever for perpetuating any image of himself at all. He is not an image. Whatever is true of him is wholly benign. It is essential that he know this by himself. But he cannot know it while he chooses to interpret himself as vulnerable enough to be hurt. This is a peculiar kind of arrogance whose uh, narcissistic component is perfectly obvious. It endows the perceiver with sufficient unreal strength to make him over and then acknowledge the perceiver's miscreation about himself. There are times when his strange lack of real courtesy appears to be a form of humility. Actually, it is never more than a simple spite. Bill, your parents did misperceive you in many ways, but their ability to perceive was quite warped, and their misperception stood in the way of their own knowledge.
Can I just stop you for a second here? I,
Yes,
to go back to this, Jesus has got to be laughing his ass off at this that he's saying. He's saying that Bill is that feel pretending he's basically saying Bill is pretending that he's a victim, and because he's pretending, he's interpreting himself as vulnerable enough to be hurt, and this is arrogance whose narcissistic component is perfectly obvious. It's arrogant to think that you're vulnerable enough to be hurt. It endows the perceiver with sufficient unreal strength to make him over, to make you into something that you're not, and then acknowledges the perceiver's miscreation about himself. There and this is the thing that was really cracking me up. There are times when this strange lack of real courtesy appears to be a form of humility. Actually, it is never more than simple spite.
right.
He's basically saying Bill's doing this because he's pissed off, and he wants to get back at who he thinks has done these things to him, and doing that is arrogant and narcissistic, and it is perceiving the other as something that he's not, which is an attack. I
Right.
mean, and it just cracks me up. I mean, I know that, what do you do when you read Jesus saying, well, when you're doing that, all you're doing is, uh, uh, you're being discourteous and spiteful. Oh
We're
my
listening to
God.
the Yeah, we're listening to the wrong mind, and that's what it is. That's all it is.
Yeah, but
It's
it's
one big
funny
spiteful
because,
brat. I mean, the ego is a brat. The ego is a vicious mechanism.
yeah, so why don't we call it a brat and just, a meanie, you know, all this thing is doing is making me be a mean brat. You know what
Yeah,
I'm saying?
but a lot of people are, that's why, everyone here is innocent because anything that's in their mind, that's just a happening. And so it's helpful to read and read. And when I say read, it's helpful to be in these teachings because, forgetfulness does creep in. And, he's saying basically when we deny who we are arrogant, but, there's also this, you know, what Ken basically says is you wouldn't be here if you didn't have all this to get rid of. That's really what this is about.
Yeah, 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 and it's universal. Everybody has it. I mean, there's nobody
Right.
that's got out
Nobody's
of it.
failing. Right. None of
Yeah,
it. It's just like it's a universal thing that we're all like living in our own mind, like just having a relationship with thought all day
yeah,
long.
yeah, and as long as we just keep doing that, it just keeps going on. But as soon as we start noticing it and paying attention to it and saying, "Wow."
Right. I finally
Did
see
I
it.
say that?
Right.
Did
Yeah.
I do that? Am I thinking that? Oh my God, no, I'm not. That's not my thought.
One of the most important things I feel in these teachings is to always go within, always. And I haven't, to be honest, I'm just starting to just pause with that because the first thought is always the ego. So if you just, and for me, I picked up that me as the infinite wants to be right about the world, and and this is not the infinite. The infinite's watching this. The character will always be confused. Anyway, should I go on here? Bill, your parents did misperceive.
Yeah, yeah. But it just, if you like as you're reading it, just think about is this how I am? Am I doing this? Because I am. Oh, Marcy has her hand up. Go ahead, Marcy.
Yeah,
We all are.
I just I just wanted to mention, when you read that, I was thinking about, well, I've always thought of my mom as controlling, critical and controlling, and the theme lives on. But her father, and I think I knew this at the time. By the time I was 35, I think I knew it. Maybe I didn't. No, I had to know that. Her father either committed suicide outside of the home, or my great grandfather maybe shot him. And technically it's listed as a suicide. But here I am thinking my mom's critical and controlling, because when I was 35, I had this birthday cake that's lit, and or no, I was lighting it. That's what I was lighting the birthday candles. And my mother said, "Be careful." And as I'm listening to this, I'm going, oh my God, my mother's father killed himself or was shot. She had this whatever traumatic experience she had. And I'm pissed off at her because she's telling me to be careful when I'm lighting the birthday candle, like I'm incompetent or something. And now I could imagine being that parent who had the trauma of somebody getting hurt, and saying, oh, be careful. And me judging that so harshly just kind of put me in my place in terms of, wait a minute, I judge all those things with my kids and
We
worry
all do.
about them,
Yeah.
so it's like, oh, the shoe's on the other foot now. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, yeah, that's beautiful, Marcy. Thank you for thinking because it seems so little, nothing. Oh, mom telling me to be careful. When you said that, I heard it. I heard my mom saying things like that to me. It made me feel like, made me feel. It did not make me feel anything, all right? I decided I wanted to feel um, a certain way because, you're not the boss of me, mom.
Right.
And
I'm too old for this now. Stop
yeah,
it.
yeah,
But I guess you're never too old.
no, and that you can learn the lesson now that was given to you then.
A
It's,
long time ago. Yeah.
isn't that amazing? I
One
love.
issue healed.
Yep, yep.
But I
Got to
was
get those universal shoes that fit both feet.
Right.
now, did we finish this, Bill? Your parents did misperceive you?
No.
Okay. Well, I just want to say that it's interesting, Bill, when he says that, Jesus, no, everybody misperceives here unless spirit comes through them, because it's a happening. So, it's like I always felt like, oh, if I don't wake up, God, that means I failed, all the ego's ridiculous things. And the truth is that Bill wouldn't have been in this story if he was wholly in love. He wasn't, and none of us are. So,
Can
Yeah.
can I read when you're done talking? Can I read a little bit? I don't know
yeah, please do.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So is that where we are, Bill? Your parents
Bill, your parents, yeah.
Okay, Bill, because this is good for me to read, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Bill, your parents did misperceive you in many ways, but their ability to perceive was quite warped, and their misperceptions stood in the way of their own knowledge, there is no reason why they should stand in the way of yours. It is true that you believe they did something to you. This belief is extremely dangerous to your perception and wholly destructive. Look at how fast that was. Good. Wholly destructive of your knowledge. This is not only true of your attitudes toward your parents, but also of your misuse of your friends. You still think you must respond to their errors as if they were true. By reacting self-destructively, you are giving them approval for their misperception. Should I keep going? No comments. Okay. As noted above, insistence on feeling unworthy is associated with arrogance and narcissism, not with humility. We come into form with our inclinations already intact, and conditioning commences at birth and even before. Most of us learn at a very young age to be afraid of being seen or of others discovering what we're really like. So we fortify our defenses, the prime one being the math we hide behind. Hiding convinces us we really do need to hide, as if our survival depends on it. And we are not open-minded about this. It is crucial to look directly at what we fear is wrong with us, because this fear is nothing more than one end of the spectrum of beliefs we hold about ourselves. Those beliefs, both positive and negative, collectively constitute the ego, which is a convenient verbal handle for what ACIM is designed to address. The Course states clearly that everything true about us is completely loving and harmless. As this material poured forth, exposing their defenses, one can imagine Bill and Helen's shock. Did they ever wonder why they had ever asked for a better way? From years of teaching, counseling, and simply living, I can testify that virtually everyone suffers from a sense of deficiency accompanied by the need to hide it. It is not possible to go through the early maturation process without acquiring some belief in inadequacy by the age of 5 or 6, or 35, I'm adding in. Years ago, a man came to see me about an emergency in his life, having never previously sought professional counseling. After a short while, he asked, "Do very many people who come to see you feel kind of unworthy?" I answered, "How about 100%? This is true even if they are not aware of it." Of course, he felt much better knowing he had a great deal of company, including Bill. Stated another way in the little book of runic wisdom, an oracle does not give you instruction as to events. An oracle points your attention towards those hidden fears and motivations that will shape your future by their unfelt presence within each present moment. Once seen and recognized, these elements become absorbed into the realm of choice. Oracles do not absolve you of your responsibility for selecting your future, but rather direct your attention toward those inner choices that may be the most important elements in determining your future. The key phrase here, hidden fears and motivations that will shape your future. While fear and guilt remain hidden, they powerfully disrupt our peace of mind, causing us to experience our world as threatening or at least unsatisfactory. These unconscious fears shape our lives, and we are helpless to effect real substantive change until we look straight at them, acknowledging the pain they engender. Thus, what is hidden must be brought to light for healing. I'm going to pause for a second because I had a comment that this is probably more appropriate for Monday night's class in terms of communication, but I I am superficially sort of unfriending or moving away from sources that are not helpful to me. And yesterday, one of my friends who, I must use her and she must use me because I feel like she uses me. So I must use her in some way. Possibly because my daughter has been friends with her daughter for years, but now my daughter has seemed to unfriend her, but she says she hasn't. So the mom called me yesterday and was like, "Is there anything you can do to make this work?" Like for a play, she's still calling. I think she's still calling them play dates, and I'm like, they're 14 and 15. It's not a play date anymore. So, um, so I don't know what I'm doing because part of it is as an ego, I'm taking care of myself by saying that person is also no longer it's triggering to be in the situations with her and I could still do them. My goal was to unfriend her in terms of the amount of using that goes on in terms of usually when you're with somebody you have things in common and you can do certain things, but I'm kind of like the fill-in is how I feel. But then there's also looking at it from the Holy Spirit, which is a whole different thing. So I'm kind of struggling with that and struggling with the fact that I also want to control like my daughter and say, hey, can't you just see her a little bit here and there? Because I think I mentioned it in one of the groups that when I'm driving, one day a week, I usually drive her friend with us and she sits in the back seat. They used to, when they were little, they used to sit together. And I can't control if they talk or not in the car. And this friend of mine said to me yesterday, well, I said that I was told that they do talk when they get out of the car. And this person said to me, no, they do not. They walk in silence when they get out of the car. And so I'm just still watching how I'm tangled up in the ego and wanting to, it's not my business anymore, whether they're friends or not. It's only my business whether I'm friends with this person or not, or whether I can still watch the ego going on and how is this a good thing for me and her or not? Because I end up having to protect myself from enabling. So that's my comment. I have no idea if that matched what I was reading or not. I went off on my tangent as usual.
It pretty much does, Marcy. And,
Okay.
I'm thinking as you're speaking, that, this is not a lesson for your daughter, obviously. This is a lesson for you. And it's not up to you. And actually, whatever it is, if you're teenage girls, they come and they go back and forth, and I'm sure you were a
Right.
teenager at one point in your life, so that they go back and forth. So whatever upset or whatever caused that, that it'll be over soon. But and for you now, for me as well, because I'm hearing the story, so it's obviously something I need to know about as well, is to look at what is the forgiveness lesson here for me, which you're doing that, I know you're doing that, but recognizing that you're the only one that can do anything about it, so
Right.
about your own forgiveness lesson. And when you learn that lesson, there may not be they might be like, what? No, we were not never talking, or I don't know what you're talking about, or because
I and I think that the important thing that I came upon was, and I said it out loud yesterday. I said, I cannot be in charge of that anymore. I have nothing to do with the situation. I can't fix it.
yeah.
Because I've made it a small effort to fix it and ask a few questions and I can't fix it. It's not my business to fix
Right.
it.
Right. And the only thing you can fix is you. So so that's it. So thank you, Marcy. Thank you, everybody. I'm gonna go ahead and close this.
Thank you, Marcy. Thank you, Lynn. Thank you. Thank you,
Yeah.
Sally.
Love you, love you, love you.